Hello and welcome back SciTi Tech. In this video I'm going to show you how to make a very simple doorbell circuit with using natural materials and using a 555 timer circuit. Let's get started. And these are the items you're going to need to make for this project. The items you're going to need: some birch bark, a 9-volt battery, a 9-volt battery connector, a 555 timer, an 8-pin IC socket holder, two 1K ohm resistors, a 104 nanofarad ceramic capacitor, a 470K ohm resistor, a push button switch, a Perfboard, a 4 ohm 5 watt speaker, and you're also going to need some cardboard, and some neodymium magnets that came from a hard drive, and some more neodymium magnets which will be used for the housing. And this right here is the schematic that you're going to need to make for this project, and you're going to replace this LED with using the speaker in its place. Now let's go ahead and assemble this project and let's get started. First I'm going to start with the Perfboard and take this 8-pin IC socket holder, put it in place, clamp it in place. Next, solder in only one pin, and as you can see, it's not flush with the board, so what I need to do is press down on the IC socket holder and remelt the solder, so then that way it can be flush with the board. And there, it should look just like this. And then solder in the rest of the pins. Next, you're going to need these two wires, and I need to connect pin 4 to 8 and pin 2 to 6, placing a little mark so that way it's easier to identify. And I'll take the first wire and solder bridge pin 2 and 6. And I'll take the second wire and solder bridge pin 4 and 8. Next, I'm going to take the 104 nanofarad ceramic capacitor and place it over to pin 1 and 2. Solder it into place. Bend over the leads. And solder bridge it to pin 1 and 2. Next, take the 470K ohm resistor and place it on pin 6 and 7. Solder it into place, and then solder bridge it to pin 6 and 7. And now cut off the excess. Next, take a 1K ohm resistor and place it on pin 7 and 8. Solder it into place, and then solder bridge it to pin 7 and 8. And now cut off the excess. Next, take the 9-volt battery clip. I want to take the positive and place it next to pin 8, and the negative over to pin 1. Next, bend over the leads. Solder it into place, and then solder bridge the negative to pin 1. Solder the positive in place, and then solder bridge it to pin 8. Next, take another 1K ohm resistor, and I want to place it over to pin 1 and 3. Solder it into place, and solder bridge it to pin 1, and then solder bridge it to pin 3. Cut off the excess. Next, I'm going to take these 2 wires, place 1 wire over to pin 1, bend over the lead, solder it into place, and then solder bridge it to pin 1. And then take the second wire, place it next to pin 3, bend over the lead, solder it into place, and solder bridge it to pin 3. Next, take the opposite end of those wires and solder it to the speaker. Polarity doesn't matter. Solder it into place. Next, take the 555 timer and place it into the IC socket holder. Put it in place, and there, the circuit is now complete. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test it out. And as you can see, the circuit is now complete. 9-volt battery, connect to 9-volt battery connector, and it should start buzzing. There, perfect. Cutting the wire means now I can take this push button and attach it between the 2 wires. Next, what I need to do is remove the excess Perfboard. Next, I'm going to take these 2 wires with the shrink tubing that came from the push button switch, and I want to solder it to the positive input of the circuit. Solder it into place. Shrink the tubing. And there, this circuit is now complete. Let's go ahead and test it out. Now the push button here, all I have to do is push it. And now it's time to work on the housing of the project. I have right here this cardboard, and I'm going to cut out these squares. And now bend over the flaps. Carefully. And there, now I created a box. Next, I'm going to take some hot glue and glue the flaps together. Hold it into place. And as you can see, I only glued 2 ends, and the other 2 ends are free. That's because the wires are going to go there. Next, I'm going to take this Neodymium magnet. Place one on one side and the other on the opposite side. And then put the 2 magnets together. And there, they stuck together. Doing this will allow me to take the 9-volt battery and place it onto the magnet so the battery stays in place, and the other magnet is meant to stick onto the door since I'm using a metallic door. Next, take a generous amount of hot glue and place it inside of the housing. And now take the 555 timer circuit and glue it into place. Next, take the wires, one that is connected to the push button switch, and the other wire that is connected to the speaker, and place them on each corner of the housing. And as you can see, this is why I didn't glue it. So that way it can go in just like this. And now repeat the same process with the speaker wire. And there, should look just like this. Next, take some hot glue and glue the flaps together and glue the wires in place. Doing this will secure the wires in place and the housing together. Next, take the housing and place it on top of this piece of cardboard. Trace around it. And there, I have another square, and this will be the lid of the housing. Next, take these Neodymium magnets and place it on top of the 9-volt battery. And I'll take a little bit of hot glue and place it on top of the Neodymium magnets. And I'll take this piece of cardboard and place it on top of the Neodymium magnets and close up the housing. Wait for the glue to solidify, and now doing this will allow me to open up the lid. And as you can see, the Neodymium magnets stayed in place, and they can stick back onto the 9-volt battery, and the lid will stay on. Next, I'm going to take some birch bark and cover up the cardboard to give it more of a natural look. trace around the birch bark, and now cut off a piece of birch bark. Cut off the excess, and now take a generous amount of hot glue and cover up the housing and the neodymium magnet. And I'll take this birch bark and place it directly on top, covering the neodymium magnet and the cardboard. Next, take another piece of birch bark and trace it, and cut out a straight line on this birch bark. Cut off the excess. Next, place it on top of the cardboard housing. Cut off the excess. Glue it into place, only on this part of the cardboard, not on the lid, so that way you can still open the lid. And I'll repeat the same process 3 more times. Next, take the lid, place it on top of the birch bark, trace around it, and now cut off a piece of birch bark. Put a generous amount of hot glue on the birch bark, and now take the lid and place it on top of the birch bark. And there, the housing is now complete. Next, I'm going to take the push button switch, and I'm going to take a neodymium magnet and glue it to the back of the push button switch. And there, the project is now complete, and as you can see, it has a very natural look to it. Now, let's go ahead and test it out. And as you can see, my door is made out of metal, and everything I have right here has magnets, including the speaker. Speaker sticks to the door, and the housing will stick to the door because of the neodymium magnet, and the push button switch also has a neodymium magnet. And you can place your housing anywhere you want, and then take the push button switch and place it on the opposite side of the door. And now you can simply close the door and the switch is in place, and the housing is in place. And now try it with the door closed. And as you can see, it works very well. And of course, as an option, you can simply place the housing on the outside if you want. And close the door and it will work as well. And the push button switch can go anywhere on the door because there's a magnet on it. Now of course, most doors are made out of wood, so you can just simply take your circuit and glue it into place. It'll work the same way. And there you have it. Now you know how to make a very simple doorbell circuit with using a 5x5 timer and using natural materials. Thank you for watching SciTech. I hope you learned something new, and don't forget to like and share and subscribe, and of course click on the bell icon to be notified for future SciTech videos. Till the next tech, goodbye.